Good afternoon, everyone. You can respond. Good afternoon. We're going to bring a lot of energy into the room right now. Not that you didn't have energy before. That was an excellent panel we were listening to. I'm really thrilled here to be joined by my fellow panelists, especially after hearing President Macron's talk earlier. I think if you were here and you listened to some of his priorities, he talked about the key investment priorities for Europe. He talked about green tech, AI, and defense and security. And he said that strategic autonomy is essential and that Europe has to reduce its dependence on other markets. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about this afternoon. Europe is doubling down on strategic investments, specifically when it comes to defense and security. Earlier this year, the EU announced funding mechanism, enablement of a new 800 billion euro spending package dubbed ReArm Europe. And it's a plan to increase funding in security in Europe for Europe, reducing reliance on foreign suppliers and increasing industrial sovereignty. So we want to pull that apart right now and talk a little bit about that with our panelists. And we do have a great lineup of panelists in Sahit of Albanian Minerals, Gordon of DOK-ING, and Ambassador Pontecorvo of Leonardo. And Ambassador, I'd love to kick off with you, if I may. And by the way, if you did listen to President Macron's talk, the ambassador will sound familiar to you because he asked the first question of Macron, and that question was about whether we're moving from an area of democracy, a century of democracy, into a century of big power. And we're not going to dig into that as much as Europe and its $800 billion investment package. So I'd like to ask you a little bit about that. Is Europe, with the ReArm arrangement, finally moving into an era of action rather than rhetoric when it comes to industrial independence?
Inshallah is the answer. How can I say yes? Actually, now let's fix the debate. You told me to be quick. I'll be quick. You talked about 800 billion. They're not there yet. It's 150 billion of new investment that the EU will have to decide what it's going to do with, common procurement and so on. Defense is not COVID. You can't buy vaccines and disperse them around. You can't buy a bunch of helicopters and disperse them to the member states. It's a different mechanism, but it's a first step forward. So it's 150 of common funding on something, common assets, intelligence, whatever the military decide they need. And then there are 650 billion euros of fiscal space in the national budgets of member states to be not counted towards breaking or not breaking the 3% of deficit GDP. That means that the debate returns to be national. So each country was going to have to decide where they're going to spend their money, because it's not EU money. It is national money, and that renationalizes the debate. The good thing is, because I agree with President Macron when he says, I don't agree very much on very many things with President Macron, on this I agree, that Europe will be able to find its way through it. And I'll end up by saying the timing is, as those of you guys who speak good English say, the time is of the essence. Now time is really of the essence. And the timing is still, we haven't got it straight yet.
Great, thank you for that. Sahit, I'd like to bring you in. You have long advocated for European self-reliance on critical strategic raw materials. How realistic is it for Europe to reduce its reliance on other regions, other parties, and become self-sufficient when it comes to strategic minerals?
Yes, I want to take the opportunity to thank FII for doing this amazing event in Albania. Richard and the team, thank you very much. Thank you everyone from bottom of my heart for coming to Albania, in this great nation that is full of mineral assets. We have the world's best chromium resources. We have the resources that has built foundation of lots of things. We have a nickel, we have cobalt, we have rare earth minerals, we have copper, we have gold, we have rare earth. We have a green energy that we power these minerals with the green energy. So before the War II started, actually the first investor in Albania was Hitler, who built his military out of chromium in Albania. He took the chromium and he built the military. So when I went to New York, I told myself, since he want to occupy the world with our chromium and resources, we should occupy the world with our mineral assets. And I have been pursuing minerals around the world for 30 years. And yes, Europe can be sustainable. We have lots of minerals here. We have substantial minerals in Kosovo next to the border of Albania. We have great industrial minerals here in the Greece. We have in Spain, we have in Italy, we have in Nordic countries, in Norway and so forth. But the problem is we have dismantled the factories and infrastructure what we have purifying those minerals, and everything have went back to China. So we need to think thoroughly again to develop those resources which we have. They are proven. I have been drilling for 30 years in Balkans and around the world, and still the treasure chest is here in the Balkans, from uranium to PGA to platinum, the minerals that gonna power the future in green technologies.
And that's a common problem, actually, in resource-rich countries and regions around the world. In Africa, where much of the mineral wealth is extracted and not processed and produced. Same with Indonesia and nickel when it comes to China having the expertise there. So it's a great point that these are some of the investments that need to take place. Gordon, I want to talk about DOK-ING a little bit. Fascinating company, specializes in robotics and autonomous systems, specifically in mine removal, autonomous vehicles that will plow through the fields where mines have been planted and need to be removed. And you've been doing this for many, many years. So this is critical for modern defense. How can Europe foster innovation in sensitive technologies like this, and without over-relying on the US or other markets for helping to develop those technologies? Back to innovation.
So thank you for the question. So yeah, DOK-ING is unmanned ground companies that deals with the ground robotics primarily. The company exists for the 34 years, and we started from our own problem. We're in the Republic of Croatia. Croatia was one of the most polluted countries when it comes to the landmines, and we started from our own problem, and we started with the development, production, and designing of the unmanned systems for the mine clearance. Since that day, we cleared more than 53% of our own land, and now we are doing the same thing in Ukraine. We have deployed the systems, and we are diligently doing the work. We so far cleared in Ukraine almost 20 million square meters, destroyed more than 10,000 unexploded ordnance, and we saved countless lives. However, that led us to the position of unique position in Europe, where we have used our systems for the last 30 years, and we are one of the biggest European unmanned ground system companies that is capable of delivering necessary capabilities that are identified in the ReArm Europe, especially in the field of mobility and counter-mobility, the ability on protection of the critical infrastructure, and we have all these capabilities in place, ready to be used and ready to be produced.
And for innovation in the rest of Europe, how can we do to foster that?
So innovation, I mean, the ReArm, or let's say the safe direction is saying that you need to have the design authority of more than 65%. For that particular reason, you need to be vertically integrated. And the innovation comes with the diligent work. You always need to work on something new. To be ahead of competition. Competition is here just to be, let's say, correction factor. For that particular reason, you need to start working on the different functions and different type of the capacities and the capabilities on the same existing or the new systems. Generally speaking, we are seeing this in Ukraine a lot. We are seeing how fast they are developing their ecosystem, how they are developing the unmanned ground systems, unmanned aerial systems, as well as the naval systems. So basically, I think that this is something that we are able to learn from them. However, I think that in Europe, we have also the companies that are capable of providing these necessary capabilities.
Interesting. And it would be nice to pull that apart a little bit in talking about defense in particular, Ambassador. You have, at Leonardo, a stake in a lot of cross-border EU projects. What lessons can be drawn from past European defense initiatives like Eurofighter and Galileo that will inform how to create collaborative efforts?
That cooperation works. You don't have to go after the dream book. You got to go on to, the simple things. I'm a bit of a country boy, but simple things happen and can work. Complicated things generally are complicated because they don't work. Which means that you can't, I think it's premature to go for consolidation in the industry. What you need to do is what, we are very humbly trying to do, what we're doing actually, which is industrial cooperation on specific projects. I'll give you two examples. We are a $17 billion euro company and a 28 billion euro of consolidation of, market cap. Rheinmetall is a bit less than us. There is now a big need for heavy and light land vehicles in Europe. There is no way that we're going to consolidate. But what we did is get together on a project. There is the biggest Italian procurement program in Europe currently is Italian land vehicles, heavy and light tanks, $23 billion. So we got together with Rheinmetall to build the two vehicles. So the work share is defined. We'll make certain parts. They make certain parts. No industrial investment is needed. We are upgrading what we're doing. And in 1 year, without, with a very light joint venture, 30, 40 people, we are not doubling our capacity, but getting close. Same model with Baykar. Baykar is a terrific Turkish company which makes probably the best drone company in the world. I think you agree because you're in that they make different things. It's more tactical and strategic level than his stuff. He's also an extraordinary company, and congratulations for what you have done personally. So they make the platform, best in class. We make the payload and the electronic part, and you double the capacity. I'll give you a couple of figures, and I don't want to hog the timing. US, EU, Europe. US 2023 spent around $252 billion in procurement. The European countries altogether spent in the same period around 110 billion. 250, 100.
Half as much.
Majorly. The US has spread these 250 billion on 12 major platforms. Land, air, and sea. The EU countries, acting separately and seldom together, spent the money on 31, 32 different platforms. What does that translate into? Major platforms I'm talking about. Land, air, and sea. The US can spend 20 billion on each platform. EU countries, 4. In a highly technological era in which everything is multi-domain, everything is cyber and secure, everything is connected one with the other, who's going to have the better product? So that is where room for consolidation goes. That's what we're doing, Leonardo is going with, we work with Thales on space. We work with Airbus on helicopters. We work with BA Systems, the German Airbus again, and the Spaniards on the Eurofighter. We work with the Japanese and the Brits on the GCAP, the 6th generation fighter. We work with Rheinmetall. We are all the advantage of the industry is that we are all system assemblers. Assemblers of systems we make ourselves, of parts we make ourselves, and parts we buy from great companies like his. That kind of helps out. If you want to consolidate and make major, and now try to go for, a European Lockheed, it's not going to work.
That's interesting that you bring up that collaboration, which sounds fantastic. And I didn't hear you mention any U.S. Defense manufacturers on that list, although I'm sure there's collaboration there. But you have, very importantly, both diplomatic and industrial corporate experience. How do you see the balance between the strategic autonomy that we're talking about for Europe versus cooperation with other non-European NATO partners?
It's a necessity in the sense that, I'll also give you another figure. Anybody know how much the European defense spending on average was before 1989? I was in the Soviet Union. I'm a former Russian interpreter. At the time, I was in the Soviet Union. You know how much the EU used to spend on average, EU countries, NATO, European NATO countries, on defense? I'll tell you, it's 3.9% of the budget. Then we got the peace dividend, and now we're down where we are. We got to go back up there. But it's very difficult choices. So, without going into technicalities at all, it is a necessity because together, I sound like Mr. Macron, together we're stronger, but it is true. There are areas of technicalities in which others are better than us. We recognize that. We're not ashamed of saying that. The Germans are better at making certain parts of the tank. Let's go to the Germans. The Turks are much better than us at making drone platforms.
Right.
Unmanned. Go to the Turks. The real problem there is the political will of doing it. And I do understand that defense has a kind of, I also worked 8 years in the EU and 5 years in NATO. And you are confronted with, at times, what are national vanities, which are a problem in cooperation. In the case of defense, I don't think it's much national vanity. It's national interests, technological supremacy interests, developing military hardware and software requires a lot of money. That is public money. So there are a bunch of variables which you need to look at. But you do need, now, in terms of, I see the difference, the difference in attitude of our partners, customers, clients, call them what you want. 2 years ago, you would buying weapons was nearly a bureaucratic, defense systems, was nearly a bureaucratic exercise. Now I see it. They're buying them with the idea that you might one day need to use them.
Yeah.
So the competition is no longer on the price, it's on the quality. By Leonardo.
This is also what President Rama was saying earlier, that Donald Trump is not just going to, when he said God saved him during his assassination attempt so that he could create a golden age in America, he actually was only half right, because he's also going to create a golden age in Europe as a result of that, as a result of those policies as well. Thank you for that. Sahid, would love to talk a little bit about that innovation and the time it takes and the resource it takes to innovate. And you've done a ton of innovation, and I don't know that we'll get a chance to talk about it on stage right now. It's fascinating, your business and how you're sourcing minerals from plants, agri-mining, as you call it. Fascinating. You should seek a conversation out with Sahid. I think he'd be happy to talk through that with you. I'm just curious how you see Europe. Is it ready to innovate and invest as is necessary, as the ambassador is saying, beyond the R&D phase to actually industrial deployment on a global scale?
Absolutely. Europe has made, throughout the history, amazing progress in innovation and contribution to the society. So it has that background of education and scientist background, so it has lots of good institutions. I work with, especially nanoscale extraction of very valuable minerals. I use scientists in Germany or Netherlands or Sweden. They can produce metals of the future, minerals of the future that solves greatest problem that Europe has. So does Europe has a power to innovate? Yes. Does Europe has the money to innovate? Europe is very wealthy. Europeans brings trillions of dollars out of Europe. When we are producing now nickel in nanoscale that is traded to very high-end manufacturers in Japan and America. So we have the resources, we have the money, but we need to change the bureaucratic system to ease the trade, to ease the communication, to accept the Europeans in a family. Albania is an amazing society. We have been here for 8,000 years, first settlers in this great land. We offer so much to Europe. We are millions of Albanians in Europe, but we are not in Europe. So I think Europe needs to come together, change the rules and bureaucracy, get the funds flow. Like funds are concentrated in Europe in few decision making. It's like you concentrate in your heart, too much pressure. The money is not going to the fingers that actually work to bring a value, to innovate and so forth. So I'm very confident that Europe has a pathways to innovate. It can compete. It's not ready yet, but it can compete. I do business in Asia, I do business in America. Europe is very stable, it's a good society, it's a great land, so it has that potential. And I think that we are making a contribution. I have in Tropoia a valley I called Silicate Valley, where we are doing amazing, as I talk, nanotechnologies that power the future, from batteries to nanoscale, all type of products. So we are innovating in our own as a family business. Imagine $23 trillion worth of money that sits there. You have piled the bureaucracy in Europe. There are people sitting in the chairs, making so much money in the chairs, just playing in the computer. They are not producing anything. So we need that money go actually to the fingers, to startups, to companies that innovate. Like he innovated things for mining industry that I'm going to utilize. So our venture bring billions of dollars business alone. He has his amazing Leonardo products that we cooperate, so we need Europe to change the path. For me, I tried to bring a green magnesium in Netherlands, 2 tons. Took me 4 days, 20 set of paperworks, $4,000, $2,000 per ton to bring it to Netherlands. I loaded 50,000 tons of ship here. One paperwork, it went to China. Next day, the money was in bank account. So we really need to ease things. It's like you have your arterias to flow everywhere, so that's how the trade and innovation economy works.
One-day shipping regulations, that should be inshallah, as the ambassador would say. Gordon, it's interesting and to talk about that innovation, and DOK-ING is a leader in this space, is the leader in this space globally. How will the next generation of European startups stack up against competitors in the US, Israel, elsewhere? Name your technology. Can it play on that level?
I mean, Europe is having a technological base that is capable of playing the game in terms of the innovation, resilience, and quality. So we proved we proved so many times that we have this capability. So from the perspective of how we are able to play the game competitivenessly, so I would say that the ReArm is a step in the right direction. Even though there is on the national based expenditures, however, every nation is having a framework in which they are able to operate. However, in order to play the game, we should be modular, scalable, and affordable type of the solution. We are seeing this movement from China. We are seeing this movement from Asian countries that they are providing affordable and good quality solutions. However, we are having the framework which we need to operate, and this is the standardized and should be interoperable. Since we are working with the alliance, we are operating in an alliance. And of course, if we want to be competitive, we need to, and I agree and resonate with me what Mr. President Macron said, we need to have the simplification of the red tape. We need to have the strategic direction, and we need to have a diligent execution of the implementation of the measures.
Great. We're out of time right now. The final, just to summarize what we're hearing, we're talking about deploying capital effectively, managing regulations, and being realistic with that level of funding that's required to make this all happen. A fantastic discussion. Please join me in thanking our panelists for taking us through this discussion of European industrial sovereignty.